As many of you know, Charlie Kirk's memorial service was held this weekend. It drew over 200,000 people to pay their respects. Erica Kirk, his widow, along with many others, spoke, including Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. Erica Kirk encouraged people to love their enemies, and she showed tremendous grace in forgiving the person who shot her husband, keeping up with the Christian values that she and Charlie Kirk promoted. A lot of people have had many things to say about the unaliving of Charlie Kirk. I've hesitated to publicly say how I felt, but I think that the time is appropriate for me to just put my little 2 cents in the air about how I feel about the whole thing. We cannot unalive people just because we do not agree with them on a religious level or a political level. That should not be encouraged. It is unacceptable, especially in America. We have freedom of religion, and we have freedom of speech, and we have the freedom to join whatever political party, if at all, in this country. And so when Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA was doing these tours to different college campuses, it was open for people to, it was not a speech that he was given. It was open debate. People could come up and say what they wanted to say to himself and to the audience. People were there to listen to what he had to say. But when you unalive someone because you don't agree with them, you're not giving them the opportunity to hear opposing perspectives. Maybe Charlie Kirk on some things would have changed over time. Maybe he wouldn't have changed over time on some things. But to take that opportunity away from a person is not acceptable. How many of us feel differently today about a particular topic or subject than we did maybe a few years ago? What is disgusting to me is when people were cheering in the audience, when people were taken to social media cheering. Are the Democrats losing ground that badly that they have to cheer that someone was unalived that did not align with their political and social beliefs? If you're a Christian and you're going by the Bible, you're not going to support certain things politically. That's just as simple as that. So you have a lot of people, black people, who claim to be Christian that support the Democratic Party. And I'm not a partisan type person, but some things you just shouldn't be supporting and you should not be voting for. You know, but if you want to debate that or discuss that with someone, you shouldn't get angry because they don't agree with you and you think it's okay to just unalive them. You have a lot of these conspiracies. Candace Owens, she's just totally crashing out with not just her, but a lot of these people who are saying that Israel or Netanyahu had something to do with the unaliving. Sometimes things just aren't a conspiracy. Sometimes it just is what it is. The suspect was in supposedly a relationship with a transgender man who was transitioning to female. And yes, he grew up with moderate Republican parents, but he himself was not a Republican. He himself obviously did not subscribe to those ideologies and different things like that. Just because your parents are lean one way doesn't mean that the child, when they grow up and they have free will of their own, they're not going to necessarily align with everything the parents told them. So obviously this young man was conflicted and confused in his mind, had mental health issues, whatever was going on with him, where he felt as though someone sharing their opinion that don't support a certain lifestyle. How many of you don't support children being transitioned? How many of you don't support the LGBTQIA lifestyle? I mean, many of you don't support that yourself. So somebody come and pop you off because you don't agree. You know, this is America. We don't have to always agree, but that doesn't mean that a person should be unalived because of it. As far as people saying Charlie Kirk was racist, I didn't see anything that was evidence to that in things that I watched from him. If there's something that someone has that I may have missed, I'd sure like to see it. Please leave a link for it in the comments. But there are a lot. But when you unalive someone, you remove their opportunity to change. And so none of us out here are perfect. Charlie Kirk was not Jesus Christ. So he was not a perfect human being. We can all strive for perfection. We can all strive for growth. We can all try to have an understanding of what the Bible says and what God would want. But none of us are a perfect embodiment of that, or we all would be running around Jesus Christ. So by him having these debates, and in the clip that I'm going to show you, by him having these debates, you don't know if he may have changed a little perspective on some things by people being able to talk and articulate so he could understand their perspective. I don't think that he was the type of person that he think every word that falls out of his mouth is 100% right. That he was just going by what his understanding of things was. Like when we speak, we're speaking of what our experience and perspective is. But as we grow and as we learn and as we talk to people and as we have conversations and debates with people, sometimes our understanding can grow. Sometimes our understanding can expand and our perspective may shift slightly, or maybe it won't shift. But when you take away a person's opportunity to learn and grow, then you're really doing the world a disservice, because none of us out here are perfect. And if we were all struck down immediately as soon as we did something wrong or saw things in a wrong way, according to what God sees, then none of us would be alive. The only person that would ever be able to exist in this world is Jesus Christ himself. So, I think that for me to see Christian pastors basically trying to get you not to have any sympathy or empathy or anything like that for a man who was just unalived in front of his wife and children and an audience, because I've heard pastors say violence is nothing new in America. That's not a good response. We know there's violence in America. But that doesn't mean that every life that's taken doesn't matter. I've even saw one pastor digging back into his ancestors in slavery days and how our ancestors were treated. I'm not going to argue with the brutality of our ancestors in America and how they were treated. But what does that have to do with Charlie Kirk being unalived on stage when he's having an open forum debate? They want to try to harden your heart. They want you to, be something that is just monstrous. The violence that is being encouraged in this country is pathetic. Someone unalived someone not too long ago talking about some free Palestine. You want a free Palestine? Get your fucking ass on a plane, go out to the Middle East and try to free Palestine. You killing people over here because you want a free Palestine. How is that helping to free Palestine? Get your ass on a plane, go out there and join the fight out there. Because we have freedom of religion, freedom of speech, all of that right here in America. So I'm sick of people from the Democratic Party, these nonpartisan liberals and things like that, thinking that they need to use violence to get their point across. If you have to use violence to get your point across, then your point isn't worth listening to. The American people spoke in the last elections. They do not want to go in the direction that the Democratic Party is going in. Instead of them heeding that warning, they're turning up the temperature. They're getting more violent. They're increasing the propaganda. You want to talk about state-controlled media? Well, the liberal media is, in essence, Democrat-controlled media because they lie. You want to talk about Jimmy Kimmel getting fired? Oh, well, you got fucking fired, man. They purposely are putting out lies and propaganda and things like that because they don't want to face the fact that the extremism in the Democratic Party is ruining the country. And I would argue extremism on the Republican side would ruin the country as well. Extremism has no place in America. You know, most people want common sense. Most people want common sense leaders, common sense legislation to tone down the rhetoric. And you even had people at Charlie Kirk's memorial protesting. What the hell are you protesting? It's a memorial service. What's there to protest about that? You know, I'm really glad that I left the Democratic Party, you know, and a lot of people are, because they're just becoming nonpartisan, or they're going to their conservative side and just being moderate Republicans. Because what the Democrats are doing with this, the propaganda, with the violence, with the rhetoric, we don't need that here in this country. We don't. You have all that extremism in other parts of the world, and people are fighting like cats and dogs, fighting to the death, blowing buildings up, leveling the cities and stuff like that. I mean, it's ridiculous. Here in America, we believe in free speech. We believe in freedom of religion. We believe in life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And for people to think that, oh, you don't agree with me, so you should lose your job, or you should be hurt in some sort of physical or lethal way, it's really ridiculous. And a lot of you people know that it's out of control. But what are we as Americans willing to do about it? What are you willing to do to say no to this type of behavior? Because I can guarantee a lot of you, if all shit hits the fan, you don't have what it takes to survive in a war-torn America. A lot of you would perish, starve to death, be killed, or whatever. A lot of us do not have anything that we would, no hidden bunkers, a year's worth of food supply or whatever. You know, if a civil war broke out in this country, what purpose would that serve? So learn how to respect other people who don't agree with you. Try to understand where they're coming from. And if you don't agree, you don't agree. But maybe you might find that maybe you might agree if you take the time to listen to what people have to say, especially if we are all in the same house. We are all living in the same country. So we should listen to what each other have to say. And if you don't agree, you do not agree. That's just as simple as that. And you fight it out in the voting booth. That's where the Civil War is, in the voting booth. That's what civilized people do. You don't pick up a gun and say, oh, you don't like transgender people and I got a transgender girlfriend, so let me go and pop you off because I don't want you to be able to speak. Do you think that Charlie Kirk's the only one in the whole country that doesn't agree with transgenderism? I mean, get real. I mean, if that's the case, all Christians will start to either change and try to, either you're a Christian or you're not a Christian. Some things just, either you believe this is God's word or you don't, because you don't modify it to suit the time. You don't modify it to suit what radicals are pushing you to pursue. And Erica Kirk, in the memorial service, forgave the person that murdered her husband because she said he's the type of person that Charlie was reaching out to. And she also was saying that you have to forgive those and love those who are persecuting you. And that is what Christianity is. You know, you believe in a certain set of doctrine that you believe is the word of God, and you need to stand on that and everybody's not going to like you because of it. So instead, you see a lot of these pastors trying to change with the times and twist the Bible and things like that to conform to being accepted socially. But that's not what the Christian walk is. That's not what the faith walk is. The faith walk is you believe that God set down these laws and you are striving to adhere to those laws. That doesn't mean that you judge people, because only God can judge people. We all are sinners in some kind of way. Your sin may not be my sin. My sin may not be that person's sin. But we all are sinners. And, that's all I have to say about that particular subject. I think it's disgusting how people were cheering this man being murdered. I think it's disgusting that people were saying all these negative things about the memorial service. I think the Democratic Party is basically a dying party, and just like any wild animal who's on its last breath, they are going to lash out even more. So I think that there's going to be a lot of things that's being pushed out to try to those death bites from a dying party. And we need to be strong as people. We need to be strong and push back on this negativity, because, we're out here trying to function. We're out here trying to survive. These people in the Democratic Party, they're trying to fight for their own power and self-aggrandizement. They don't give a fuck about you as a person. They really don't. They're out here trying to rile up the troops to fight for them to stay in power, for them to stay in the high chair, for them to have food on their table and big bank accounts. They're not fighting for you. They've convinced you that they're fighting for you, but they're not. They have their secret and hidden agendas. They have their big money donors that are promoting certain things, and they're all about themselves. Because if they're really about the American people, they would want us to be able to live, love, have peace, be able to prosper, and to survive. Here is an open forum, open debate that Charlie had, where a young black university student came up, and Charlie Kirk listened to what he had to say, and they had a healthy debate. I think that these debates were very interesting to me, and these debates don't need to stop. There needs to be more of these debates, and not necessarily debate, just discussions, because we're in this together. Watch this. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. Comment below if you're so motivated to do so. This is Wonders of a Black Woman.
All right. I'm here to ask the age-old question, DEI.
Okay, great.
Yeah, give me your perspective on DEI, and because based on what I heard earlier, I feel like you don't think I belong here.
Oh,
because
really?
Of
Why?
How I am a black man, and because of DEI, I'm not qualified enough to be here. Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Then you belong.
But why do I have to prove that to you?
You don't. You brought it up. I didn't.
Okay, but can you explain to me your position on DEI?
Yes, people should not be in positions just because of the color of their skin. Hard stop.
Okay.
And that includes white people. A white person shouldn't get a job just because they're white. So I would agree. No one should be getting a job just because of the color of their skin, including white people.
But do you feel like I'm here because
I'm not feeling anything towards you, actually.
Okay,
I'm not prejudicing you. I'm not stereotyping you. I'm saying that it's a material.
I'm not saying you are. I'm not saying you are.
No, you are. You said I don't feel comfortable being here. You started with.
I didn't say I wasn't comfortable being here. I said I feel like you made it to where I got here through DEI.
So let's examine that. What have I said that makes you feel that way?
When you mentioned how DEI is only just putting people of color and marginalized groups in spaces, even if they're not so and so
correct. That's exactly what DEI does.
But that's not all that it does. You're categorizing it as something it isn't.
No, that's exactly that is the charter mission.
That's not all.
Okay,
that it
so
does.
diversity, equity. So equity is outcome based. is about making people who are of different skin colors have the same outcome, regardless whether or not they are qualified. The best example we have of this is the Students for Fair Admission Harvard Supreme Court case, where black students, they did not, literally they could have a SAT score 300 points lesser than the Asian equivalent and still get into Harvard. That is DEI in practice. I believe when you're hiring for an organization or for a company or for whatever you are doing, you should prioritize merit and character, and race should mean nothing. We should build around things that matter and not things that don't matter.
Okay, but you have to also take into the fact that black people have only been able to completely legally be able to make profit for themselves for around 60 years. And this is no. Since segregation ended in 1965 and the Equal Rights Act in 1965, so what you're talking, there's not.
How did that? So let's talk about you. How did that impact you? How did something that happened 60 years ago impact your life?
It impacts me all the time.
How?
What do you? Okay.
You're at Texas A&M. You're doing great.
Okay. Yes. Sure. Yeah.
So aren't you a living example that all that's a bunch of nonsense and you could just act good and behave well and succeed?
But there's also living examples of the exact opposite. If you look in the impoverished neighborhoods in certain parts of Chicago or St. Louis, there's black communities being thrown aside because they're not getting education.
Thrown aside? Okay,
yes,
so
aside.
I think we can get somewhere. Why have the black community gotten poorer since the passage of the Civil Rights Act? Tell me that.
Because of the way the culture has been perpetuated through the years.
Hold on. Think about it. So they were richer when we were segregated and more racist. America's become less racist.
What about Tulsa?
Yeah, no one's going to defend what happened in Tulsa again. But let's talk. We're talking about a lot of different cities. We're talking about Chicago, Tulsa. But let's again. This is a very important point. Why is it that Black America has gotten richer on average, poorer on average, since America passed all these anti-racist laws?
I can't answer them.
Okay, yeah. So do you think the fact that 70% of black youth don't have a dad around is probably pretty important?
That's because of the culture.
So respectfully allow me to interject. How does the white culture impact the fact whether or not a black dad stays around when he impregnates a woman?
I'm not saying it's the white culture.
What is it?
The culture that has been perpetuated through the 200 years of slavery, the 100 years of segregation, and Jim Crow laws.
The marriage, so I got to interject again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt too much. But in 1960, before the Civil Rights Act, 20% of black youth had a dad around. Now it's, 20% were single fathers, 80% had a dad around. It's been inverted. So we actually have seen black dads run away from their kids the last 60 years. Why?
These are the type of questions that we as a community have to ask and answer for ourselves. How many single mothers are out here working 2 jobs and a side hustle just to make ends meet? The fathers are nowhere to be found for their children. I think we need to really examine the culture and the pulling away from traditional Christian values in our communities to answer some of these questions.
That Black America has gotten richer on average, poorer on average, since America passed all these anti-racist laws.
I can't answer them.
Okay, yeah. So do you think the fact that 70% of black youth don't have a dad around is probably pretty important?
That's because of the culture.
Respectfully allow me to interject. How does the white culture impact the fact whether or not a black dad stays around when he impregnates a woman?
I'm not saying it's the white culture.
What is it?
The culture that has been perpetuated through the 200 years of slavery, the 100 years of segregation, and Jim Crow laws.
The marriage, so I got to interject again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt too much. But in 1960, before the Civil Rights Act, 20% of black youth had a dad around. Now it's, 20% were single fathers, 80% had a dad around. It's been inverted. So we actually have seen black dads run away from their kids the last 60 years. Why is that?
Because of the raised incarceration rates, because of the perpetuated culture.
So how does one go to jail?
That's obvious. I'm not answering that question.
Yeah, so maybe it's because they committed crimes?
Okay, but when you're forced it's not just this is old, this is in the past, this doesn't affect you anymore.
Okay, so actually let's take a different group. How did the Holocaust impact Jews? They're doing pretty well.
Well, because they got reparations, we didn't.
How? What reparations did the Jews
Through
get?
acknowledgement, through money, through
No,
all
we acknowledge slavery happened. So,
okay, but you're sitting here and acting like it plays no role.
no,
now.
but to your argument, the Holocaust was 80 years ago. Half of all the Jews on the planet were killed. Everything they earned was taken. Jews are doing great. They're the wealthiest subgroup, racial group or ethnic group in America. If all of a sudden something that happened 80 years ago impacts your material prosperity, how did Jews defy the curve? How did poor Asians do so well? Why is it that Asians are now the wealthiest minority in America, many of whom came with no money in the 1950s or 60s?
Because of the culture and opportunities that were provided to them.
But you're not hearing me out. Black Americans have had the same opportunities. However,
But people still look at us like criminals every day.
Hold on, but like, I don't look at you like a criminal.
I'm not saying you do. I'm saying some people do.
But I mean, do you want me to be brutally honest with you, or do you want me to be politically correct?
Brutally honest with you.
Okay. Do black people commit more crimes than white people? It's not even close.
Okay. But you have to take into account the culture that has been perpetuated.
Okay, got it. So we can agree on this. Do you mean internal black culture?
It's not. It's deeper than that. Like,
do you think? Let's take time out. Do you think the average rap artist that a black kid in the hood is listening to is glorifying marriage and family and saving your money?
That's what sells because it's a culture thing. It's not.
Then the culture needs to change. If the culture is promoting violence, if the black culture is promoting promiscuity, single motherhood, abandoning your children if you're a father, abusing women, then the culture needs to change. And that's not something that white people need to do for us. That is something that we need to do for ourselves. Making excuses for criminality. Look at how there were people who were protesting when Trump wanted to send in the National Guard, because a lot of these mayors were saying, oh, well, crime has gone down. Well, crime hasn't gone down enough. And every life that is taken, there should be some sense of urgency in reducing the crime. Not, oh, it's going down, it's going down a little bit, it's going down a little bit, but you're still dealing with a high murder rate. You should be willing to have all hands on deck. We should not be dancing and singing to music that is promoting violence and drug use. And how many families have been destroyed because of drug addiction? So if it's a culture it's a subculture that needs to change. So if Charlie Kirk is considered racist because he's pointing those things out, I think that he was encouraging this young man to challenge his ideology, his beliefs, to let him know that we as a people can take control over our lives and control over the culture that we participate in and promote, and get back to our Christian values. Get back to a place of community, of family, of respecting each other, of, not blaming all of our problems in life on someone else, and taking control over your life and overcoming any and every obstacle. That's what we need to be thinking about. That's what we need to be promoting to each other. Not, oh, our ancestors were slaves. Oh, we went through all of these problems as a people. Yes, we did. And yes, we are still here. And yes, we're still standing. And yes, we're still multiplying. We need to do more than just survive. We need to thrive.
Just within the black community.
I agree. No, but hold on.
Everyone listens to it. It's not just isolated.
It's bad for everyone who listens to it. The point being is that black youth, as they are being raised, their role models are largely not glorifying staying with one woman, getting married, going to church. And if you're wrong, show me the black role models that are doing that. There might be a couple I could think of, maybe. But if it's about culture, you're right. The internal black culture has collapsed the last 60 years. We're no longer elevating the family. We're no longer elevating staying with the person that you're with. So our contention here as conservatives is that the systemic racism stuff is a bunch of rubbish. Instead, it's systemic bad choices.
That's where I would disagree with Charlie Kirk. I do believe that a person who is racist can use the system to be racist. So the system itself is not racist, but it's It's the people who are using the system. So if a person is racist, yes, they could use the school system, they could use the justice system, they could use the medical system, they could use anything to target the people that they hate. So a system can be used in that way, but it depends on who's using that system. A knife can be used to cut a cake, or it could be used to poke somebody. So it's the person that's holding that system. It's the person that is holding that power. And I would say to a lot of Black people, I know you may not want to hear it, but a lot of the things that's going on in these predominantly Black cities that are Democrat controlled, they're using those systems to oppress our people. That's why it's high crime. That's why the school systems are bad. They're using those systems to oppress our people, and it could be a Black face that's mayor, that's city council, and that's the superintendent and stuff like that. So, we need to get wiser and be more result-oriented. And what I say is be more result-oriented. Okay, you have a school system. Are these children reading and doing math at or above grade level? Okay, you have a police commissioner. Is the crime under control and at the lowest it could be? I mean, are the streets being kept clean in the Black communities? Because you're sending the street sweepers and the garbage people twice a week in these white areas. Are you doing the same in Black areas? You have to make sure that the fruit of these systems are not producing undesirable results. And Black people aren't doing that. They're just blindly voting Democrat. So you can have racists that say, okay, Black people are voting Democrat, let's pull over into the Democratic Party and oppress them through there, because they know that you're just going to vote blue no matter who, even though you can clearly see that a lot of things are not being done that's supposed to be done in your communities. So, that's why a lot of people are just starting to become nonpartisan, because they're more result driven. So I wouldn't agree with a lot of conservatives that are saying there's no systemic racism. I think that the system itself is not racist. I think that, like I said, it's the people that have their hands on the system. If they are racist, if they have bad intentions, they can use that system as a weapon against whoever it is they're targeting. And it could be racism, it could be sexism, it could be gender, it could be anything that a person with bad intentions uses and abuses their power. So that's just, I would encourage people to go to the Turning Point USA social media channels and just watch some of these debates. I think that they were very interesting, and it's unfortunate that this young man felt that Charlie Kirk having these debates was something that he needed to try to silence. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. Comment below if you're so motivated to do so. This is Wonders of a Black Woman.